Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Nick Bour, who's the founder and CEO of Inspire Wealth, and he's discussing today retirement exit planning for business owners. Nick, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks again, Mike, for having me.
You're welcome. It's great to have you back. And I know we're going to talk about this really specific topic for business owners, and just kind of makes me think first and foremost, let's first define what it is. What actually is exit planning as it relates to retirement for an entrepreneur or a business owner?
Yeah, so I think the big thing I've seen, over my career is a lot of times the biggest chunk of a business owner's wealth is tied up within their business.
Yeah.
And it's very common to see that if they're 5 or 10 years from retirement, they're very much focused on running their business because that's what they do well. That's how they've gotten to the point they're at now. And they're not really thinking about, am I going to sell my business as part of my retirement plan? How does that look? Do I have a key employee that I could sell the business to? Do I need to find an outside buyer? What's the easiest way to do that? And I kind of give that overview because when we're looking at retirement planning and how it can relate to exit planning or business succession planning for business owners, it's very much intertwined. Because if that business owner, I'm going to use easy math examples. If that business owner has a business that's worth $1 million, and let's assume for a minute that's 50% of their net worth, it's such a crucial thing to make sure that they're trying to maximize that for a retirement, whether it's income, whether it's, okay, how do I make sure I leverage the business I've built over the last 20, 30 plus years to make sure that my family is going to now be okay as I enter my next phase, which is retirement. How does that look? Are there strategies to reduce taxes? There's so many things that the business owner should be thinking about. And generally speaking, when I initially get introduced to a potential client that is an entrepreneur or business owner, some of the initial questions that I ask them are things around, well, how do you feel about your current retirement plan that you've done and that you're currently working on? Do you feel you're behind, you're ahead? Have you done any succession planning? What is your plan for the business once you do get closer or thinking right around the corner of retirement? And a lot of time I don't want to use the term deer in headlights because a lot of times the business owner is like, you know what, I just haven't gotten that far yet. I haven't really thought about how I should be utilizing the business that I've built as part of my retirement plan. And even if the business has a retirement plan for the owner and the employees, that goes even a step further to say 80+% of business owners I've talked to over the years, if they've been in business for at least 10, the majority of their wealth is either in the business, in a building the business is housed in their personal residence, and or within a retirement plan within the business. That's like 80 to 90% of their wealth. And because it's so intertwined, if that owner doesn't start planning, I don't want to be unrealistic and say you need to plan 20 years before you retire, because that's not feasible. I will say they should be thinking about it and they should start making plans toward it within 10. And the problem is it's very common that when I first sit down with someone, it's that, well, I would like to retire yesterday, or I would like to retire in the next couple years. Do you have any succession planning or exit planning done? No. Do you have a key employee within the business that you think could buy the business or take the business over? No. So we're going to be looking for an outside buyer, right? Yes. Okay, do you happen to know a business broker or someone that can help you kind of market that business for sale? No. Okay, well I do have people on my team that can help with that. And a step further still, that 1 or 2 year mark, or that yesterday I want to retire, is so, it's so late stage for that business and for that owner, that business that owner starts to lose some of that lack of passion or that lack of drive that they needed to build that business to get it to the point that it was, because they're so focused on that next phase and kind of wanting to enter retirement.
And isn't it true also that a business would have so many more maybe time-sensitive things that would take more time and movement than an individual? Like if someone comes to you and says, yeah, I need to retire in X number of years, and you go, okay, let's take a look, it might necessitate moving some things into a certain fund or creating a certain fund. But like you're saying with the business, it might take that as well as, are you going to sell it? Well, we need to kind of pretty up the business and solidify and shore up some things so that you get the top price. Also, what is your plan as the business owner? Are you going to take the check and ride off in the sunset, or would a part of your vision be, you know what, I've created this since its inception, so I would love to sell a percentage of the business and stay on to help them run. And so there's a lot of variables with a business that would necessitate some extra time, more so than just make sure you plan for retirement. It's a lot more to it than that.
There's no question that there's a lot more to it. You kind of hit the nail on the head, Mike. When you're talking about a business, there's so many moving parts of, do you want to retain any ownership? Do you want to stay on as a consultant? How long do you want to do that? Do you have a key employee identified? Do we need to find an outside buyer? All of those things are moving parts. And to give you an example, I have a client that I've worked with over the last 4 or 5 years that 3 siblings were operating a business that Dad originally started. Business, like most, took a hit during COVID, is now rebounding. They've actually held the business longer than they really wanted, but they really didn't have that succession plan in place. They kind of figured, well, they got an offer pre-COVID that they were considering, and they weren't quite ready, but so they turned it down. And in retrospect, that might have been a mistake in their mind now. And ironically, going through a lot of these things with them, they're now the operator, which is the one sibling that runs the day-to-day. She's in her late 60s now, and the other 2 siblings are in their 70s. And unfortunately, through the planning process and the talking to 2 key employees that were potential buyers after they turned down the initial offer about 5-6 years ago, all of a sudden, unfortunately, one of the siblings passed away. And it just created a lot of other, okay, what do we do? How does this look? Yeah, a lot of variables. And again, the one sibling is now in their 70s and is working longer than they wanted. Yeah. And again, because they didn't do that initial planning maybe as early as they should have. And some of that is, I'm not saying it's the siblings or the owner's fault, because again, they're focused on running their business. That's how they became successful. But that's also why it's so important to have members of your advisory team that are on the same page, that are making sure that they're having ongoing conversations with the owners. Okay, when would you like to retire? When would you start slowly, if it's slowly transitioning out, what does that time frame look like? Are you thinking 60, 65, 70? Tell me what that looks like. so that we can kind of back into what type of succession planning we need to do, when we should start doing that. Do we need to incorporate retirement plans on top of just a traditional 401k or simple IRA or SEP IRA? There's a lot more to that most owners don't even know exist. They're just, again, they're running their business, and that's what they're focused on.
Have you ever heard of this before? And I'm going to ask this question and then lead into this other point based on what you just said. You never really want to go to the grocery store and do your shopping when you're just starving, because it's going to be like, everything looks great, just give it to me all. And you're going to buy more than you need, probably buy things that you shouldn't buy. Well, what you were just saying there, it made me think of, you need to know your own succession plan or your own plan for the future, because do you still want to be working and running your business into your late 70s or whatever age frame? Because if you get to the point where you're just like fed up and you're like, this should have been done years ago, and you get to that point really quick, now you just want out. And now you're going to make decisions that might be rash or rushed. So either one, rash or rushed, and it might not be the best calculated decision. Whereas if you could take that step back and go, you know what, I am in my 50s and I want to be done when I'm in my mid-60s, so let's make a plan for that. And you know what, in the mid-60s, I probably still want to be working a little bit, so I'm going to probably sell a certain percentage of it, and I still want to be kind of on the board or kind of be part of it, day to day, couple days a week, and then when I'm in my mid-70s, then I want to be totally done. But talk a little bit about when you have that kind of runway space, it helps you not make rash decisions because it gives you more options.
There's definitely something to be said, and I kind of smiled as you said the grocery store analogy, because, good Lord, I do not want to go to the grocery store while I'm starving.
Right,
that
is
give not the best time to go. Exactly, I want everything. That looks good. That looks good. So from that standpoint, you're absolutely correct. From a business owner standpoint, you absolutely want to do prior planning before you get to the point where, I'm just done. And not only because you're more apt to make rushed and rash decisions, which in turn could mean you end up not getting as much money as your business could be worth.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, are you selling, or are you making the right decision for the business? So if you're a business owner, and obviously you've built this over a period of years, and it's extremely important for you, for your mind to continue this business, and whoever continues it, but you just want it to continue on because you've worked so hard to do it, and that was your blood, sweat, and tears. You don't want to feel like you're rushed. And that's when I made that comment earlier about the owners could start losing some of their passion or some of their drive. It's because they start to realize, okay, I think I waited too long. I think I'm at the point to where now I don't want to do this any longer. And then they're scrambling. And a lot of the other things I've also seen over the years, and this is definitely for smaller businesses. So I'm going to say businesses that are probably doing, let's say, under $2 million in gross revenue. So as most of us know, the small business definition really is a big part of our economy. There is a ton of businesses out there that are doing $500,000 in gross revenue up to about $2 to $2.5 million. And even though those aren't what a lot would call the big boys, those are a lot of businesses where the owners are making $200,000, $300,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year. I mean, really good livings, because they've done a lot of the blood, sweat, and tears and building that business over the years. The problem is those are the ones that tend to wait the longest on when do I sell the business? What do I want to do? And I've worked with some other, what I would call some other members of the client's advisory team. So whether it's CPAs, whether it's attorneys, over the years, and had conversations with them. And there are so many that you would take a step back, Mike, if you knew how many businesses literally close because they're done and they didn't do the proper planning ahead of time, and they don't want to wait for the succession planning and the right buyer. I'll give you a perfect example in a town not far from me. It's a city over. So I'm in Brighton, Michigan, and the city just west of me is in Howell. There was a jeweler in downtown Howell that was there probably for north of 40 years. And he ended up closing his doors because really he was the face of the business. Everyone knew him. But a step further, he also waited too long. He was in his 70s by the time he closed the doors. And I drove past there maybe, I don't know, a year ago or so. And do you know what's at that same corner in the building he used to be in? A jeweler
shop. Oh, no.
No, a jeweler.
Well, that's really smart because that new jeweler's like people are so programmed to come to that corner to get jewelry. So that was smart. But
it was very smart.
He missed out on capitalizing on some of that legacy.
That was my point in all this, is that you've got someone that just focused on running his business and did such a good job and had such that reputation, and everyone got accustomed to his face over the years that he waited too long, and he literally ended up saying one day, okay, listen, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be able to enjoy time with my family. I want to enter that next phase, whatever that looks like. Yeah. And he literally, I think it was over maybe a couple months, like, going out of business sale, everything must go, and he liquidated everything and he moved out. And it was done. And, I don't go through downtown a ton. So it was just weird. The other day I drove by and it was like, oh, there's a jewelry store there.
Yeah.
Interesting. And it's really, it's unfortunate, Mike, because I do think about that jeweler that put all his blood, sweat, and tears over the last 40 years. And because everyone knew him, was his business going to get maximum dollar that it was probably worth? No, probably not, because it was so much based on him and the name. There's no question, though, he would have gotten value out of that.
But, let's play a little bit of fun game here and say we turn time back and he's on the line with us here going, hey, let's brainstorm an idea for me to move out. One creative thing could be, you know what, I'm going to sell this business for X percent or dollars or whatever, and I want to stay on as kind of like the Walmart greeter, air quotes. And I want to be kind of like put my picture up in the corner, and I'm going to come in 2 days a week and just kind of meander around and see my customers and glad hand and hand out some donuts, and maybe I'm creative and I'm going to create a line or a piece or some of the jewelry because that's my little forte. He could have done that kind of thing for many more years and kept that stream of income and kept kind of that customer base and done some fun little events. And then the new owner coming in could have, been banking on that momentum and then building that up. So, I mean, you just never know. But again, getting back to that runway of time, if he had thought about it and thought creatively, that could have been opened up some options for him.
Well, and let's take a step back and think about this for a minute, Mike. So you're absolutely correct in what you said about opening up some options if he would have taken, started doing that planning a little bit sooner. But think about it from an economic standpoint, and think about it from the next generation coming up standpoint. How, if it was the right person and you had a younger entrepreneur coming out of, whether it's school, it doesn't matter what their background was, but if they liked working with people and they knew jewelry, and even if they didn't know jewelry, how appropriate would that have been, and how much would that have continued and changed the lives of both of those individuals and kept a business in that community that had already existed for north of 40 years.
Yep.
If it would have all it would have taken was someone to kind of come in and kind of be that quarterback or consultant and say, okay, listen, what is your vision? Are you just done altogether? Do you want to be done altogether? Or as you said, Mike, could you be that greeter with flexibility where you're only coming in a couple days a week, maybe 3-4 hours a day to continue the relationships you've worked so long and hard to build over the years. And you're going to not only get what I will call your quasi-pension from the buyout, and you have now continued that income stream or revenue.
And guess what you've taken off your plate? You hated coming in doing the books, or you hated doing the whatever the case is, but you sure loved, so you take the 2 or 3 things you love doing, talking to the people, creating a little piece of jewelry or doing a Saturday morning, whatever, but take all the bookkeeping and the marketing and the sales and the vendor relation, take all that and give it to the new owner. So I think that it just makes so much sense to kind of go, maybe not, like you said earlier in the talk here, maybe not 20 years ahead, maybe not 10 years, but a good amount of runway ahead of doing some planning and succession. So let's wrap up with this, Nick. How does Inspire Wealth's team approach bring business owners some of these kind of options to open up their eyes to help them make some of these decisions?
So there's a few ways we do that. Number one is that we have a team approach. And when I say we have a team approach, I mean I have experts in specific areas that I will bring to the table based on what that business owner needs. So whether it's legal documents for business and estate planning as part of the succession plan, whether it's, the owner is trying to make up some retirement savings in the back 5 years before retirement, and no one's ever talked to them about additional carve-out strategies that are what I call non-ERISA, meaning they're not overseen like 401ks, like 403bs, SEPs, symbols. They can be created as executive benefit plans. So we can carve those out, and that could be a way, A, to tie it into the succession plan, or B, tie it into the owner's supplemental retirement plan. There's a lot of ways that we can do that, and having that team to come in and kind of have a fresh set of eyes is so important. And I'll take it one step further, Mike. A lot of times when I'm meeting with a business owner for the first time, and that owner says, you know what, Nick, I'm looking at 3 to 5 years of me wanting to transition out. Okay. Do you have a key employee? No. Number one, if you're selling the business to an outside buyer and you don't have an internal key employee, I absolutely would say you should be doing planning 3 years plus, because it could take a year or two just to even have a potential buyer in having a conversation. And then you got to negotiate terms and costs, and there are several factors. And I'm mentioning these things because they're so important to have those key people on your team to be able to come in and give that fresh set of eyes. Example, when someone says things like that to me, one of the first things I will say before anything else that I talk about, like that I really specialize in, is I will ask about, do you have a retirement plan for your employees? Yeah, I have a 401k plan. Do you match? Yes. When's the last time someone's reviewed that 401k for you to see is there any value add, meaning additional investment strategies, additional options within that, and or being able to control costs a little bit. And usually the owner's like, we haven't really reviewed it much in the last 3 to 5 years, or it's been a while. So I'll ask something like that. Then I'll take it a step further, and especially doing things I really don't specialize in, and I have someone on my team that does, their employee benefit plans. So meaning health insurance, the group disability, the dental, the vision, and any of the employee group benefits. And usually the owner will look at me and say, well, okay, why do you want to know this stuff? And then the last thing I will do is I will ask to review their commercial liability insurance. So their commercial liability, their workers' comp, things like that. And again, I get the kind of, what do you want to know that stuff for? And I look at them and I say, okay, think about this logically for a minute. If we're trying to start doing succession planning, one of the first things that I look at that's sometimes the easiest to increase or improve profitability is, can we control some costs on your employee benefits, on your commercial insurance, and or on your 401k or retirement plan?
Yeah.
Mike, to give you
plug
an example,
up the holes in the bucket.
Exactly. What if we could come in just from those things and actually come back to the owner and say, guess what? We're going to save you 5 to 10% on your gross rev bottom line, or you know what? We're going to save you $10,000 a year in expenses between these three things. Well, what does that do to that profitability as you're starting to have conversations with a business broker, with a business consultant that's going to try to help them find that buyer? Well, it looks better. It's better
like
profitability.
Real estate curb appeal. Looking at it from the outside in, the business looks good because, we've tweaked this and fine-tuned that and upgraded this, and now all of a sudden, boy, it looks really great from the curb, and now that purchase price looks good. Now, obviously, the numbers have to all work for the business side, but that curb appeal and that, that feeling that the business has kind of really taken attention to all of those fine details makes for a potentially much better sale. Makes great sense, Nick.
No, for sure, Mike. And a lot of the business owners, as I first meet them, it is extremely common for them to say, "Well, I have a CPA that is kind of like I go to, I trust, or I have an attorney, or I have an insurance broker on the commercial side, or I have someone that does." Everyone has experts or professionals. The difference is, and Mike, you heard me talk about this on the individual side too. That's great that you have those individuals, but are those individuals communicating, and is there someone that's helping bringing those individuals all together to be able to create maximum efficiency for you, Mr. Owner? And I'm going to tell you 99% of the time, the answer is no. There's no one overseeing. There's no one kind of bringing everyone together. It is very common where they're like, yeah, I have these 5 or 6 advisors as part of my team, but they're not talking to each other. Maybe 1 or 2 know each other, but it's almost a certainty that all of them don't.
It's not a cohesive vision of everyone integrated together, working for one common cause, which is you, the business owner.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. And that goes back, to some of the planning that we're doing is, most of the time, especially if the owner owns the building, one of the things that I'll talk about that myself and my team really specialize in is some of the tax planning strategies and some of how it can intertwine with the retirement planning of the owner is, well, do you own your building? Well, yes, I own my building. All right. Do you remember what you paid for the building? Well, yeah, I paid $200,000 for it. What do you think the building's worth now? $1 million. Okay. So that's 800,000 of gain.
Yeah.
Has anyone talked to you about what does that look like? Do you plan to retain the building? No, I think I want to sell the building as well. Well, there's some ideas. A lot of people that we work with have heard of 1031 exchanges in real estate. There are things we could do to help control and reduce taxes on the real estate piece so you're not looking at that big tax burden all at once. Same thing with the business. Okay, what's your cost basis per se for the business? What are you selling it for? Are you doing a promissory note over 5 to 10 years and a down payment? Like, how are you getting bought out? All of those things relate to retirement planning as part of the exit planning for the owner. And until someone really lays it out for the owner and actually says, okay, this is what is important, and this is what you should be thinking from a tax planning perspective. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Owner, we're talking to your CPA, and your CPA is looking at me and having a similar conversation with him saying, yeah, he's right, Joe. If we're not doing planning, you could end up with an $800,000 gain just on the building, let alone the business. And what could that do as far as reducing that potential dollar amount that you can leverage for income or for investing for retirement? And it's, again, if everyone's not on the same page and everyone's not trying to maximize efficiency for that owner because they are on the same page, is it going to hurt that owner from a retirement income or a retirement tax planning perspective? And generally that answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I made a comment about halfway through our talk here, and it's like, boy, there's a lot of things that a business needs to consider here, right? As opposed to an individual. We have just uncovered and unpacked so many things, and it's probably just the tip of the iceberg. So what I would ask, Nick, is if someone is listening to this going, you know what, give me a little 30,000 foot overview, take a peek into my business. What can I be maximizing? What about an exit strategy for my business down the road? What's the best way someone can reach out and connect with you to learn more?
The best way is definitely our website, which is inspireyourretirement.com. And I'll also say this as well, because of a lot of the holes and shortfalls we have seen over the years with business owners and their planning, especially when it comes to the retirement planning and the succession planning. We're actually in the process of designing and creating a couple ebooks and retirement guides specifically for business owners. So some of those are going to be available on the website. Some of them, it's very personalized. So I would tell you, if you are an owner and you are listening, step one, go to the website. We have a page specific to small business owners that's going to continue to evolve and enhance over time. And if you're truly looking for that outside set of eyes, just to ask some questions, have an initial 10, 15-minute conversation, please go to the website. We have, contact info you can put in, just as simple as phone number, email, name, and someone, either myself or someone from my team, will definitely reach out and just schedule an initial 15-minute call.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Nick. It was really a pleasure talking with you again today. And you guys have such a great process dialed in for business owners. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having us again.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.